Hello and welcome everybody. Today it's book review time and I'm going to take a look at Along the Razor's Edge by Rob J. Hayes. So Along the Razor's Edge is book one of the War Eternal by Rob J. Hayes. It's a self-published series which currently has 4 books released. My understanding is the first 3 books form a complete arc and then the 4th and the upcoming 5th books are in addition to those. So the series can be read as a trilogy and stopped there if you wish. Now, I picked this one up pretty much on a whim actually. My friend Terry said that it was part of the Audible Plus catalogue, which meant that you could pick it up for free as an audiobook. So I did that, downloaded it to my phone and just let it sit there basically. And then when I finished an audiobook, I was thinking around of what should I listen to next. This one popped into my head, so I pressed play and was pretty much blown away. Now, I don't say that lightly, and I do tend to think of myself as being quite conservative with my emotions in my reviews, but I was genuinely astounded at how good this was. From the start of the audiobook to the end, I loved this one, and I immediately went out and picked up the next 2 audiobooks and added the physical books to my wish list as well, because I know that I'm going to have a really good time overall with this series, and I want it in my collection. So what is it all about then, and why did I love it so much? So Along the Razor's Edge is quite a dark book, both in terms of tone and in setting. The majority of the book is set underground in a prison called the Pit, and essentially any of the scenes that are not set in the pit come to us in the form of flashbacks. It's a first-person story told by Askara Helsane, or Eska for short, and at the time of this book she's a 15-year-old prisoner in the pit. She fought in what is referred to as the greatest war that mankind has ever known, and we do see snippets of that through some of those flashbacks. And when the war was lost from her perspective, she was taken prisoner. Eska is a powerful sorcerer, so once she was taken prisoner, the only place for her was deep underground with the worst of the thieves and the murderers. So this first book in the series tells the story of Eska as she struggles to stay alive in the pit, playing other inmates off against each other and constantly adding names to her list of people who she wants to give payback to when she escapes. Because nobody ever escapes from the pit, but Eska won't let that put her off. She is determined and she will not be broken. Now, there's a couple of things in this book that I don't normally tend to like in my reading, but they didn't bother me here because of the masterful way that they were woven into the story. The first of those is those flashbacks that I've mentioned, which normally I find take me out of the story, which hopefully at least I am otherwise enjoying. So normally when I have those, I just want to get back into the story at hand. Here they weren't a problem whatsoever, and I just felt that they added to the world building and to the characters and the relationships between a couple of those characters, and it was all done really well. It was all seamlessly integrated into the main storyline. The second thing is the actual narrative style itself. So this is a story that's told by Eska as an old woman. She's retelling a life that she has already lived. So with that, my main issue normally is that there's a spoiler involved in that. I know when I'm reading this type of book that no matter how dire the situation seems to be, our main character will escape, they will survive, because otherwise how are they going to be able to tell us this story? Additionally, what we get here as well is a little extra view of the future. We get to know a few of the details of the person that Eska becomes. So these are just little snippets that are thrown in casually as she's narrating the story. And again, it helps to build a picture of the person that she is because we know the person she will become. So both of these elements of essentially what is a future narrator, they add spoilers to the story, but they don't feel like spoilers here. They're just so well done and they form a part of the narrative that you just don't really notice as you're reading. And I think the key to that is the storytelling itself, where Eska is such a vivid narrator that as you're reading, or in my instance listening, it's just so easy to get lost in the words and the events that she's talking us through. As a character, Eska has quickly become one of my favourites in fantasy, even though I've essentially known her for such a short time. She's powerful enough to pretty much hold her own against almost anything that's thrown against her, and that's bearing in mind that for the majority of this story, flashbacks aside, she's cut off from the magic that would essentially make her a goddess in comparison. She doesn't have access to the one thing that would make it easier for herself, so she has to find other means of survival and of fighting back. The narrative itself, though, is what really made me fall in love with Esker as a character. She is probably the most foul-mouthed hellion that I have come across in writing, and it was just so masterfully done. I just really appreciated everything that she was saying, and it added a real depth of character and of humour that really worked for me. Normally, I tend to find where there's so much swearing, there's so much colourful and inventive language that it's just a bit too much for the story. It just seems like it's done for effect and for shock value, as opposed to being just a natural part of the character. But what we got here was the good side of that. It definitely felt like it was a natural character talking as they would normally talk. It was just really well done, and I feel that the colourful language that she so frequently uses tells us so much about who Esker is. I never once felt that it was unnecessary or that it was unnecessarily crude, for instance, but I would say that anyone with sensitive ears or eyes should stay away or at least proceed with caution. Now, one thing that I really did like about this story, and that I can't wait to see more of as I progress through the series, is the magic. So, as I said, in here we don't actually see a vast amount of the magic, because in the pit, Esker is cut off from her magical sources, and these sources are actually a physical source. It's something that the sorcerer will swallow to allow them to access the magic. There's then also a weed that will make the sorcerer vomit up the sources so they can no longer use the magic. So when taken prisoner, the first thing that happens to these sorcerers is they are stuffed full of this weed so that they vomit up, and they become weak physically as a result of that, as well as being weak magically because they've now been cut off from their source. Now, because we don't see it in the sort of current timeline, most of the explanation of this magic is told through flashbacks, and it's done through another trope that I'm not usually fond of, which is the magical school setting. Here it works well, and I didn't have a problem with it, probably for two main reasons. One of those being the narrator that we have here in Esker, and the other one being that we're just looking at little snippets that kind of match the current timeline of the story, rather than a full kind of chronology of the main storyline itself. So although we don't see too much of the magic itself, we do get to know plenty about it and about what Esker can and cannot do, as well as the overall limitations and consequences of magic on the sorcerers themselves. And I felt that this was all just naturally delivered to me in the story. I didn't feel at any point that the information was just being thrown at me en masse. So because I listened to this on audiobook, I'll give a quick note regarding that as well. The narration by Moira Quirk was absolutely brilliant. It really helped me to enjoy this book. The storyline itself was really excellent, but the narration did for me just take it up that extra little notch. I just thought that the energy and the nuance she got into Esker was really well suited to the character, and it made me feel like it was actually Esker telling me this story rather than somebody reading out Esker's story for her. Several of my friends on my Discord server, where we've been buddy reading Along the Razor's Edge, have read it in physical format, and they've really loved that as well. So all round, for the group who are buddy reading it, whether it's audio or physical form, it's fared really, really well. I think there was one person who gave a 4 out of 5 rating, and I believe everyone else in the group who has finished this book has given it 5 stars. So I guess if you haven't already worked it out from what I've said about the book, that's a bit of a spoiler for my own rating, where I was one of those who gave it 5 stars out of 5 because I just had a really, really great time with this one. On to my weighted ratings then, and we'll start off with the enjoyment, and I gave this one a very rare 20 out of 20 because it was such a good time. The narration, just as I say, elevated that extra level. I just cannot think how I could have enjoyed this book any more than I already did. For the world building, I've given 16 out of 20. I really liked the overall idea of the world and the little snippets that we saw of it, and I loved the magic and the explanations that we got with that, and just the kind of raw aspect of it, the sorcerers physically forcing down these sources and then being forced to vomit them up at various points as well, and all of the individual limitations we see around that, like certain types of magic that you must vomit up, you can't sleep with them because they will just run riot and cause so many problems. I thought that was really vividly told. The one thing, of course, that would have given this category a higher score was to see more of the world, because, of course, flashbacks aside, we only really saw the pit, so I know that there's a lot more to explore of this world, and hopefully that's what we're going to get in the future books in the series. For the characters, I've given 19 out of 20. I've said throughout this review how much I loved the character of Eska. She is definitely an all-time favourite. Not just a favourite female character, but a favourite character all told. The other characters we don't see quite as much as, but of course this is a first-person story, so that's generally the way it goes. What we do see of those characters tells us enough to like or dislike them, because we are seeing it through the eyes of the narrator, Eska, so we really follow her kind of mindset and her opinions and her feelings, and that was all really well done. For the plot, I've given 16 out of 20. There isn't a massive amount to the plot, but we don't really need that in this type of story where we're getting to know the character and we're learning some of the bits and pieces about the world. We know that the overall aim that Eska has is to escape from her imprisonment in the pit, and that's pretty much all of the storyline that we need. Everything else that we get outside of that just adds nice little bits of character and nice bits of flavour to the world. For the writing style, I've given 9 out of 10 because it was all very well written. I loved the flow of the language in here, especially the colourful language, as I've said, that Eska uses herself. I just really enjoyed it, had a good time with it, and it was read really well by the narrator as well. For the pacing, I've given 4 out of 5 because it was very well paced. It was quite a quick paced novel overall, and I think that really helped because where we've just got that one main setting and it's a deep, dark underground setting as well, if it was a bit of a slower pace, it could have really dragged the book down. So the pacing that we did have here, I think, was really well balanced for both the setting and the narration. And then for my discretionary category, I've given 3 out of 5 because I really do enjoy both the original and the updated hardback covers for this book. I think it sets the scene really nicely for what we're going to get inside. And then the audio is definitely worth a couple of points just on its own because it was so exceptionally delivered and just really made me feel at home in the story. So overall, that gives Along the Razor's Edge a fantastic score of 87% and a really good placing in my Hall of Fame, coming in at equal 13th. So I don't think I need to say that I definitely recommend Along the Razor's Edge, book 1 of The War Eternal by Rob J. Hayes. I'm going to be continuing reading this series relatively soon. I know the group who in my Discord server have been buddy reading this, as I've said, I've really enjoyed it and they're all looking forward to continuing with the series as well. And I think we're going into book 2 potentially towards the end of June. So I really had a great time with this one. Let me know in the comments down below if you've read this as well and what you thought of it, good or bad. And if you're looking to read it, let me know if I've pushed you over the edge and made you go and pick it up. That's all from me today, so for this video, hit the like and subscribe if you haven't already done so. Check out the description box below for all my social media links and support the channel links, including my book club Discord and my Patreon. Thanks very much for your time today. I hope you appreciated this review. I'll hopefully see you in the next video soon, but until then, as always, take care of yourselves, read some good books. Bye for now.